Gonna make it? Unfortunate. 30 seconds till the ads end, and then we're gonna hit it. Do we know what we're reading tonight? I was like, I'll pull up one of my works in progress at this point. I don't give a damn. You hear voices. You shouldn't hear voices. Yeah, those are the only two that are in here. Um, as I said, they're be voices. Can you guys still hear me? Interesting. Well, the infamous words of Specialist Scuff. Fuck it, we ball. Hello, everybody. No point in having a backstage if you guys can hear us anyway. Uh, as you may have noticed by the title, tonight is a special edition, i.e., we're figuring shit out because we had some scheduling conflicts with our scheduled folks tonight, and so we are doing our first ever booked for Friday filler episode. So, tonight it's going to be myself, Izzy, and Julie up here when Julie gets power back after a storm decided to knock politely on her front door and invite itself in. Um, and we will be reading uh, random pieces that we are still trying to determine what they will be. Now, after that entire thing, this is when they're going to say they can't hear us. Good evening. All right, let's see who we got in here so far. Hello to Kesh, Foggy, Bitzer, Ace, and they hear us, so that's perfect. Kesh is volunteering to submit something. Like I said, I'll throw up one of my works in progress if we want to read through that. That way, I'm not the one reading it, because I've already read my stuff on stream over on my page. Not a self plug, because do not follow or subscribe to me. I don't stream anymore. Um, yeah, my life consists of work, family, and this show now, so I have no room left for my own streaming, hobby. Occasionally, editing creepy teaser videos for special segments. The video did pretty well. It was received a lot better than I thought it would be. I think it's like one of the top ones on the YouTube page after our like super big author interview that we did. That one skyrocketed fast. Tonight, Izzy will be cosplaying a fresh caught tuna, an organ transplant, keeping her on ice. while we get while we wait for Julian, we get our material all lined out and seeing the predicament that Izzy is in. For anybody who finds themselves in a similar situation, might I make a recommendation? Had to do this for wifey because she's very heat sensitive. You go to Walmart, nearest Walmart, in the camping gear section. This doesn't apply to those of you who don't have a Walmart. Look at you, know who you are. Anyway, go to Walmart, go to your camping section. In there, there's going to be these clear plastic tubes that say cooling towel. Get them. They're made out of like the same material as like the old ShamWows, if you guys remember those. But you soak those things in cold water and they stay wet for a very long time and cold for a very long time. Wifey wears one around her neck almost all day, every day. Isn't that right? Yeah. You have a basket of them. All of them. Actually, I can go get you one to show you what it looks like. All right, as promised. This is what they look like. It says Chili Pad. Again, not sponsored. Let's see if I got a price on this thing. I don't. I don't remember how much it was. They're not bad though. Anyway, you just pop the top on it. This one's brand new, not even opened yet. And it unfolds. It's a lot bigger than that. Booked for Friday unboxing video. You guys weren't ready for that. It's actually cold already and it's not even wet. You guys can't tell by the video, but it's a very like rubbery material. Feels very weird. It does not feel like cloth. Feels almost like soft latex. But there you go. As you can see, it is quite long. Just soak the whole thing in water. Roll it up. Place around neck. Oh, it's actually cold right now. Why is it cold right now? And stay chilly. Oh, Izzy has one. She's just been torturing herself with ice packs. Till I brought it up. Hey. They really work. They really, really work. Power is still out. Sorry, Julie. So we have an offering from Kesh, an offering from Ace, an offering from Julie, an offering from Patrick, an offering from me. So we got 5 options. Do we put it to chat vote? And an offering from Jar. 6. I don't even know if the poll will let us put up 6 options. It should. 6 UDM. Oh, okay. Yeah, I can't check my DMs right now because it'll show on screen unless I go to a be right back real quick. So let me do that just so I can. Is it just your submission or your not your submission for the week, but like your submission for tonight? If it is, I'll pull it up in BRB. Um, yeah, it's a PDF. Okay, gotcha. Like I said, we'll probably I'll throw up a poll here. Can't hear Izzy. Izzy, say something. Try it again.
Hola, ¿cómo está?
Hey, speak of the Canadian witch herself. Okay, we can hear Izzy now.
Hey, there we go. We can hear.
Okay, it lets us put up 5, not 6. So who do we want to put in? Julie, Julie, can you even send us your stuff? Or is there a place we can find it to read it? Not that I can see chat right now. Oh. So we have it. So Julie. Char. Patrick. Esh. And Ace. And I guess I will keep my name out of the hat. Unless you
Hey,
guys.
Julie, which
What?
Patrick?
5 minute. If you guys want to manually type my name in, feel free. But it's not going to be on the list. If I spelled anybody's name wrong, um, that's why I write and I don't edit. Send it to the HMP email. Okay, I'll pull it up. I will pull it up if that's the winner. Whose is that?
That would be one of Patrick's characters.
Oh, gotcha.
Yep.
So I see 3 people have voted for themselves. Are you saying you're good to come up, or you're good to be? What are you good for, Kish?
Oh, good for whenever hers is read out.
Oh, okay. I was gonna
Yeah, no.
say, I know you said you had a long day. I wasn't gonna, make you come up here and burn more spoons.
Of course, I voted for myself. I want Izzy to meet Atticus. Well, if I could ever get through Carter and Evie's story, that would be fantastic. But sitting down to read.
I'm on the HMPP account, so I'm not voting. That's the rule.
Gotcha.
Plus, my name isn't up there, so I'm not gonna vote for myself.
I also own one of Bitzer's books. FYI.
You're just waiting to get the Zinnia Void book.
Yes. No, whatever. Plan. Okay. I got that one.
How many are being read? That will that will determine how long we want the show to go. I figure if we do like a chapter from each, maybe. Since we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 now. And about a chapter each is roughly the same thing as what we would do on Saturday nights. That would be only 7 submissions, so that's well within our timeline.
I was looking everywhere because this thing was originally in this bag, and I was like throwing bags everywhere. Like, where is it? I don't know why I need so many computer bags.
I believe the song is Throw It in the Bag, not Throw the Bags.
I have 4 different computer bags, laptop bags.
Izzy needs a swap meet, guys.
Oh, here's what's even better. Y'all saw everything fly this way, right? I also have one of those shelf towers up in the upstairs closet that I share with Will. And that tower is completely filled with bags as well. I don't need any more. So those are not on my Christmas list, people.
So yeah, essentially, if you guys have stuff that you want, that you have, all right, pay attention before you start clicking. I'm looking at you. Stop now. Listen. If you have stuff that is not a submission for your weekly submissions that you want read out tonight, same word cap applies. Okay. We'll read a chapter or up to 2,500 words of your stuff tonight. So if you have a work in progress that you want critiques on, you can tell us if you want a critique on it. If you don't, we'll just read it. But we're just, like I said, tonight's just a filler night for, we're going to call it a work in progress Friday. I would take a lot of it, Bitzer, but the shipping would be murder.
Hey.
All right, so it looks
Sorry.
like so
Sure.
Okay, so the poll was kind of useless since we're going to be reading multiples, but we'll just have Char go first.
Yo. All right. Sure. Do you have a specific spot in this beauteous book that you would prefer me to meet Atticus with?
If you got something you want us to read, Foggy, send it. She said chapter 1.
Okay. The Mobster and the PTA.
Please hold.
Oh boy.
Please hold. While this is happening, if you guys want to send stuff, again, not your weekly submissions, not something that has been on the show or you plan to put on Saturday nights, has to be completely separate. If you want to send it, you can either DM myself or you can send it to the HMPP email. I will be monitoring both. Please proceed.
Chapter 1. It was 7:16 in the morning. Who in the fuck was knocking on his door? Atticus fumbled his way downstairs, standing in his kitchen and staring bleary-eyed at his front door, trying to decide if he would be mad or relieved about having imagined someone banging on it so goddamn early on a Thursday. Fuck! It was mid-February. The sun was barely even up. Then another knock sounded, and he settled on Mad. Rubbing his face, he pushed his fingers through his hair before grabbing the nearest gun he had on hand, taking the one in the bread box, which reminded him he was out of bread, and heading for the door. He waited for the third knock, trying to work out when the fuck was at his place. None of his bosses would come to his house without texting first, unless it was an emergency, but they wouldn't bother with knocking. His neighbors were all nervous around him, and while it could be someone looking to strike a deal, everyone who knew what he did also knew not to bother him before noon. Knocking on his door almost 5 hours before that deadline was fucking ballsy. This could easily be a hit, an attempt to lure him out with his guard down. Even checking who it was through the window would risk his life. Finally, the third knock came, this one a bit more insistent, and Atticus's temper snapped. Fuck it. If this was a hit, at least he could work his temper out on them. He yanked the door open hard enough that the hinges protested, taking in a breath to rage at whoever dared to bother him so fucking early. Immediately, freezing, when he found himself staring down at a little girl. She lit up, smiling at him wide enough to show she'd recently lost one of her bottom teeth. Atticus just stared, trying to think of the last time anyone had given him a smile that cheerful that hadn't had malicious intent behind it. His brain couldn't think of anything other than the fact that it was 7:20 in the morning and he had a kid standing on his doorstep. "What?" he groused, his already deep voice rough from interrupted sleep. Such a tone normally had people shrinking away from him, but the little girl, she couldn't be more than 7 or 8 years old, just smiled wider and immediately thrust her arms forward. Holding a glass teddy bear out towards him, took a few seconds for him to realize it was a coin bank. "I need you to be my dad," she spoke, and Atticus just stared. It was definitely way too fucking early for this. Atticus stared at the young child on his doorstep, porcelain teddy bear outstretched towards him, trying to work out what in the fuck she could possibly mean by what she just said. The offering of the bank told him she knew people hired him to get things done. It was admittedly concerning that such a young kid knew that, but she may not realize pretty much everything he did was illegal. It didn't change the fact she knew she could pay him to complete a job for her, and he made a note to figure out where in the fuck she'd learned that. Right now, however, he was more concerned with what her request for him was. "Kid," he stated in a flat, "I'm so done with this" tone. "First off, you shouldn't be knocking on strangers' doors like this." "No, I don't care what the reason is," he interrupted her, holding a hand out to stop the objection he knew she was about to give. She immediately snapped her mouth shut and huffed at him. The scowl she was shooting him had a ghost of a smirk twitching at the corner of his mouth, but he clung to his aggravation of this entire situation, especially so damned early in the morning. "Second of all, why in the Cutting himself off, he cleared his throat before continuing. "Why are you asking a complete stranger to be your father?" "'Cause I don't have one, and I need one," she said, like it was the most obvious thing in the world. Atticus stared at her, trying desperately to find the words to explain what a ridiculous reason that was. "It's not forever. It's not for forever," she added, and Atticus tightened his hand around the knob as this little brat had the gall to roll her eyes at him. "I just need you to be my dad for a day." "Why?" he asked, regretting asking the moment the word left his mouth. "'Cause tomorrow is parent-teacher day, and I need a dad. Grandma can't go anymore. It's too hard for her to leave the house that far. She can only really get to the mailbox now. I told her I could get the mail, but she said it's good to stretch out her gams." She blinked and wrinkled her nose as she stared up at him. "What are gams?" He blinked a few times, trying to process all that information. "You know your mother could go, right?" I don't have a mom either, she replied, and Atticus felt a sharp pain lance through his chest at the first sign of sadness on this little girl's face. The brazen confidence she'd had ever since he opened the door finally breaking, just for a moment. Then her chin lifted and she sniffed loudly, shoving the bank out at him again. I know people pay you to do favors for them. I need you to go to parent-teacher day with me. Pretty sure it's gonna freak out your teachers if some random man claiming to be your father shows up. You're what, 7? Putting you in the 2nd grade? They'd know your family by now. First off, she spoke, mimicking the tone he'd said the same words in, and Atticus was torn between respect for her being brazen enough to mock him and a growing desire to cuff the back of her head. I'm 8. Second, they know my dad left after my mom died, so no one's ever seen him. For all they know, you're him and you finally came back. Third, I don't really care what teachers think. I don't know about Atticus. I like this little girl. The news of her father abandoning her had all manner of conflicting emotions that he didn't like starting to take root. Explained why she was living with her grandmother. Then why do you want to hire me so bad if you don't care what the teachers say? Atticus asked, his eyes narrowing as he saw something flicker in her eyes, something he was very familiar with. He saw fear and anxiety on her face, just for a moment. I want the kids to stop teasing me, she explained. The knob he was still holding creaked, feeling an odd anger welling up in his chest. They make fun of me for my dad running off, so I figure if I bring my dad to parent-teacher day, they'll think he's still around and stop making fun of me. The multiple emotions rolling through him shifted, settling into an oddly protective feeling, which threw him off, considering he'd known this little girl a grand total of 12 minutes. So basically, you want to hire me to get your bullies to shut up, he clarified, and let out a sharp, heavy sigh when she nodded. I'm tired of them teasing me for not having real parents. It helps that you're really big. You might be able to scare them a little. Oh, he could scare them more than a little. Atticus had his fair share in terrifying bullies. They just usually weren't prepubescent. The determined look that returned to her eyes had him rubbing his face, muttering into his palm. Definitely too early for this. Okay, look. What's your name? Atticus asked, and gave her a sharp look at the glint he saw in her eye. Yes, you shouldn't give your name out to strangers. Give me a fake name if you want. I don't care. I just don't want to call you kid anymore. Call me Skylar, she said with enough confidence and not nearly enough hesitation that he was fairly certain it was her real name. Rubbing his eyes, he let out another sigh before folding his arms. I don't make it a habit of taking kids on as clients. It sucks that you got brats giving you a hard time, but I'm sure you've heard that whole sticks and stones thing, right? Grandma says that all the time, Skylar spoke. And that's what I've been telling myself, but it still hurts. And now they're saying I'm why my dad left. Atticus fell quiet, watching this little girl wrestling with her emotions on his doorstep, trying her best to appear professional and serious, even while the memories of cruel words buffeted her. A small voice tried convincing him to go along with it, but he shook his head, smothering the voice and frowning at her. The last thing he needed was to get tangled up in drama involving a kid. That was a quick way to get the wrong kind of reputation. Look, I'm sorry they're being... Biting his tongue to stop the shits that immediately wanted free, he cleared his throat. Mean to you. But I don't let kids hire me. Why not? she pressed, and he tugged at his hair with an exhausted sound. Not ready to explain to her the main reason why a 41-year-old man spending time with an 8-year-old could come off as very bad in the neighborhood. Not at such an early point in the morning. You can't afford my prices. It's just for a day. How much would it cost to rent you for the day? Rent? You don't rent me! Atticus snapped, and came close to throttling the little girl as she rolled her eyes. Fine. How much does it cost to hire you for the day? Schuyler pressed, and Atticus felt his temper snap. 1,000 an hour, he hissed, leaning forward to glare at her. And I take cash only. Atticus gave her his best glare, a twisted scowl that sent grown men running. She just stared back for a moment before huffing. That's a lot of money to stand around and talk to people, she grumbled, and he shrugged as he straightened once more. That's my fee, kid. I don't work for any less, and anything more than talking is extra. Yes, he was absolutely bullshitting right now. But it was so fucking early. He just wanted to go back to bed. And it was the only way he could think of to get her to leave without just telling her to fuck off and leave him alone. After all, he didn't know who she lived with, and as an associate of the Dolan Syndicate, he had to have a certain level of decorum and maintain decent connections with those who also worked in the underbelly of the city. And he needed the suburbanites in this part of Racine to think him scary, not rude. Hard to milk the higher class for every dime they had if they thought you were unpleasant to work with. Terrifying and deadly worked much better when there was a sheen of manners laid over top of them that convinced the adults they could still approach as long as they were respectful. 1,000 an hour? Up front? Schuyler asked, and he watched her suspiciously before nodding, not trusting the tone she was asking in. She nodded a moment later and trotted off his doorstep. He watched in growing disbelief as she ran along the sidewalk and up the stone steps, the building directly next to his, flashing a toothy grin at him as she disappeared through the front door. She lived beside him? Grumbling very harsh words, Atticus stepped back inside his own home and shut the door, twisting the locks with a hard snap and prowling into his kitchen in search of coffee. He was still wired with enough irritation that he knew he wouldn't be able to get back to sleep, something that pissed him off even further. Considering he'd gone to bed at 4 a.m. and was running on barely 3 hours of sleep, he was going to need a lot of caffeine. He just turned the coffee machine on and pushed some bread into the toaster when he heard a familiar rapping on his door. Turning to stare at it, he felt his temper overshadowed by disbelief. No way. No way she was cocky enough to come back with even more demands. And no fucking way did she have enough money to hire him to be her pretend father. When the knocking sounded again, he very nearly took the door off its hinges as he opened it this time, staring down at Schuyler with growing disbelief. What do you... Here, she spoke, thrusting her hand forward. Atticus stared at the fistful of bills she had in hand and felt panic wash over him as he saw her holding 3 bills of a very familiar shade of pink. Young lady, where in the fuck did you get $1,000 bills? He snapped, dropping into a crouch in front of her and pushing her outstretched hand back into her chest. Grandma had them in a photo album, buried way deep in her closet, she said simply, trying to push them towards him again. You said it was 1,000 for an hour, right? This will get me 3 hours. You stole money from your grandmother? Atticus hissed, and she hunched her shoulders, looking guilty. They weren't doing anything. She had other bills, too. They just sit in her photo album. Atticus blinked once, his gaze falling down to the magenta bills once more. The paper magenta bill. Not plastic, meaning it was printed a very long time ago. Realizing how old that currency was and how much he could probably get for it in the hands of the right collector had his fingers twitching. The business side of his mind was quickly clotheslined by his rational side, and he shook his head once more. Stealing from your grandmother is wrong, Schuyler, he insisted, rising back to his full height. Atticus watched her crumple in on herself, rubbing at her eyes as she sniffed loudly, and felt like the biggest monster in the world. With a heavy sigh, he rubbed his face and muttered under his breath. How many of those bills does she have? 7, Schuyler mumbled, rubbing her nose on her sleeve. Words that were not fit for a child's ears ran through his mind, staring down at her. Those had long been out of circulation. Only the Bank of Canada would accept them as legal tender at this point, and that would only be to break them into smaller bills. The only other option was selling them to a collector. She had 7, apparently. Even just one bill would get him... Oh, he was a bad man. You know stealing is bad, right? He demanded, and she nodded, rubbing the heel of her hand into her eye. I'll take 1 of those bills, Atticus continued, holding a finger up as she immediately perked. You have to put the other 2 back and never steal anything ever again. So you'll pretend to be my dad for an hour? Schuyler asked, looking hopeful. Already, Atticus was regretting this, but that bill was too tempting. I'll be your uncle, not your dad, for 2 hours, he suggested. Schuyler immediately hopped in place in excitement, holding one of the bills out to him. He felt his mouth trying against his will to smile at the cute behavior. Immediately, he forced it into a sharp frown, which caused her to stop hopping, though she still grinned huge up at him. Taking the bill, he stared at it for a moment before shoving it into his pocket and pointing at her. No more stealing. Yes, sir, Schuyler agreed, giving him an exaggerated salute. She then dug into the large front pocket of the overalls she wore, dragging out a crumpled orange sheet and holding it out to him. The words Parent-Teacher Conference were written along the top in large, exaggerated letters with Racine Elementary School underneath. There were a handful of cartoon characters and objects scattered across the page, with the date and time written along the left side of the sheet, and a blurb about everything they were looking forward to accomplishing. There's a barbecue and social time? Atticus asked, giving her a skeptical look. She nodded, wrinkling her nose. Yeah, it's not very good. They burn a lot of the burgers. It's supposed to let all the parents hang out and make friends with each other. That's usually when the kids like to say things and be buttheads. Atticus choked on the laugh that wanted free, clearing his throat with a wince. All right, well, this is on Saturdays, so how do you even get to school? You take a bus or... I ride my bike there, she said proudly. The thought of this little girl, riding her bike on her own all the way to her school, had a sick feeling in his stomach, knowing all the things that could happen to a child alone. Well, if we're going to sell this, I should probably show up with you, he muttered, pointing a finger at her with a stern look. We're going to walk there, though, because I don't want you getting into cars with strangers, and I'm still a stranger, he insisted. She rolled her eyes again, grinning, and nodded. Don't give me that attitude, young lady. You're being very reckless right now. You already sound like a dad, she said with a laugh, and Atticus scowled. Uncle, not dad. Now go do. Fuck. It's Thursday. You're supposed to be going to school right now, he scolded, and she laughed again as she raced away, heading back for her front door. Definitely a dad! Skylar yelled as she ran into the small house and slammed the door behind her. Atticus stood there for a few more seconds before shutting and locking it. Staring down at the flyer and the $1,000 bill, he wondered what in the hell he'd just gotten himself into before wandering into the kitchen. Grabbing his phone, he stared mournfully at his now long cold toast as he dialed Riley Dolan's phone number, sighing as he looked at the bill once more. Hey, Miss Riley. So, weird job just got tossed my way. Dun dun dun.
Okay, I have two things. One,
I need a bookmark.
this man just fell for fucking crocodile tears. Two, if I had been in his position, and I say this with my full chest, y'all can hate me all you want. If I had been in his position, I would have used her like a frickin' lawn dart. And then I would have taken her out to ice cream and agreed to it for free. But that sass, she 100% would have gotten yeeted. Learn some respect.
Why don't I have bookmarks? I'm a reader.
Straight up before the money even came into play, when she pulled that whole I'm 8 thing, just back of the neck, hem of the shorts, out into the middle of the yard. And then I would have walked up and looked down and been like, now let's go get ice cream. You watch your mouth.
But you're a stranger, Uncle Sticks.
Okay, guys, so after my rant is over, I'm going to put us into a brief BRB while I do some camera magic, because I found a way I can actually monitor my Discord without messing up the camera. So I'm going to do that, rearrange the cameras, and we'll be right back. So stick around. You'll still be able to hear us. Okay.
They, in fact, do get ice cream at one point.
Not surprised.
Not surprised.
Camera shifting magic time. Da-dun-dun. Da-dun. Oh, wait, wrong. That's copyrighted. You didn't hear anything, YouTube. Shut up.
I didn't hear nothing. Wait, what do you mean, what was that? Cash? Put an ice pack underneath my throat. It's cold. Quick physical BRB.
Okay, we're back. Camera magic is complete. Okay, so now I can actually continue monitoring the Discord and the DMs we've gotten. So I have a handy dandy little list that you guys can barely read on camera of people in the order that they're sending me stuff, so we can get through these. Oh boy, it is very small. Can we? Yeah, but then I you should. There we go. While Izzy's stepped away, that leaves it to me. So next up, we're gonna have chapter 1 from Ace. Get into it. Chapter 1. It was a cold, dark morning in the forest. I do not know how to pronounce this name, so I'm just going to go for it. Karen moved through the still air, hardly making a sound. She was a fighter and didn't care too much about making a noise. She could handle anything that jumped out at her. There were occasions, though, where she wished she possessed a little more stealth. She was also not a very good tracker and was starting to feel a little lost on her way back. Chrissy? Chrissy, can you hear me? There was a rustle of leaves near a tree. A young woman peered out of a tent flap. I'm right here, Kay, she whispered back. Chrissy stood outside the tent and gave her sister a hug. I missed you. You were gone for quite some time. Both girls stood a little over 5 feet in height, and both wore a green tunic, loose-fitting brown pants, and dark brown boots. Both carried a quarterstaff made of white wood for walking through rough terrain and for defense. Except for their eye color, both sisters were identical in appearance. Karen had been out in the cold air for long enough, so she guided her sister inside the tent. Although the outside of the tent was small and concealed under a pile of leaves, the inside was an entire living space. This was made possible through an old concept called null space. Null spaces are pockets of configurable space concealed inside various containers. Most common containers of null space were tents and bags. The girls kept their living space decorations simple, with everything either tan, dull green, or brown. It made the place seem woodsier. There was a fire in the fireplace that instantly warmed Karen when they entered. Karen set a long bundle of cloth on the small table in the middle of the room. I found it right where she said it would be, near Mom and Dad's grave. They took a seat on the edge of the large, round rug and began to unwrap the cloth. Inside were two silver longswords, each in its own gold sheath. On each crossguard was a rose with brown leather vines wrapping around the silver handle, which ended in a silver ball hilt. On the opposite side of each crossguard was engraved a letter. One sword had the letter K, the other sword had the letter A. These must have been Mom's swords, commented Chrissy. They are very pretty. Karen noticed a small note underneath the swords. She picked it up and read it aloud. Dear girls, one day when you are old enough, I am leaving both of my special swords for you. They are engraved with the initial of your first names. They were my inspiration and helped me through many tough journeys. May they come to aid you during your travels. Your father has also left you some things. Seek out Mavlos in Tinderwood Village. All my love, Mom. Karen held back her tears, but Chrissy couldn't stop them. She picked up the sword with the letter A engraved on it and held it close. After a few minutes, Chrissy laid the sword in her lap, held up her hand, and called out, "Oh, great sword of wandering, aid me now!" A transparent greatsword appeared in the air near her. She grabbed it and pulled it down to cover the sword. It sat in her lap. This is my mother's sword, which has been passed down to me. Take on its qualities, so that her memory can live on in thee. The great sword shimmered as a rose sprouted on its crossguard, and similar vines began to wind around the handle. It remained a great sword, though, as her skills at fighting had begun with that weapon type. She then swung the great sword onto her back like she was placing it inside a sheath, and it vanished. Erin reached out and took her sister's hand. Mom would be proud of you. You have taken your training seriously and are an aid to all those around you. Thank you, Kay. What do you want to do now? Do you know who this Mavlos is? First of all, we have to remember to use our adventure names. Mom and Dad were poisoned by someone. Do not know who that was. It is not enough that our appearance is totally different from them. We also decided to change our names as well. My name is Karen Carmichael. You are Chrissy Coble. Now, Mavlos may try to call us Kay and Smith, but let's remember to tell him that we're now going by our new names, okay? Chrissy nodded. As for Mavlos, yes, we know him. He was the general storekeeper at the village Mom and Dad would go to for supplies. Dad would go elk hunting with him and bring back great tasty. You couldn't pronounce his name right, so you just called him Mav. Remember when you lost your balance and fell against his shelves? After a moment of thought, Chrissy suddenly remembered and gasped, covering her mouth with her hands. Yes, I broke one of his vials when it fell off the shelf. It's only dragon toenails. Yeah, but he started calling me Dragon Toes. Both girls laughed. Not one of my favorite nicknames. Karen stood and attached her sword to the cord tied around her tunic. Still cold and very hungry. Make some lunch and then go to the village. It's close and we will be able to make it while there is still light in the day. Chrissy sat down next to a large chest sitting near the fireplace. She opened it and shivered as it was an ice chest that kept the contents cold. She took out some meat strips and threw them into a pot that was hanging over the fire. She took out Oh, I already read that line. Then she took out a block of cheese and a bottle of milk. While the meat cooked, Chrissy poured them both a small glass of milk, cut a small slice of cheese, and broke off a piece of bread from a nearby loaf. Karen joined Chrissy by the fire when the meat was done. What do you think Dad left us? Oh. What do you think Dad left us? Chrissy asked as they ate. Not quite sure. Left it with the shopkeeper, it could be anything. I want to go home. It took all of Karen's strength and resolve to hold back tears at that moment. She could not let any sign of weakness or worry present itself in the sight of her sister. They never had a proper home. Their parents had always lived on the go, going wherever help was needed. They lived in each town for a few months as each one was founded while homes and businesses were built to sustain the people. Our home, Karen smiled and replied to Chrissy, but she knew it wasn't enough. Even though their parents never stayed in the tent belonged to them. In each town they lived in, their parents would set up that tent, sealed area of their dwelling. Girls would sleep there each night, allowing their parents to stay in much smaller dwellings otherwise required. For as long as she could remember, the tent had been the home for her and Chrissy. Chrissy, though, was looking for a home outside of the tent. The thought was heartbreaking for her. She had no idea what they could call home. Do you mean Tinderwood? Asked Chrissy. Karen shook her head. This tent. This has always been our home. Will continue to be, if possible. But when we were with Mom and Dad, it felt more like home. And what am I? Karen argued back. A grizzly bear? Chrissy chuckled. Of course not. She grabbed a large nearby pillow and buried her face. She tried to talk, but her words were muffled by the pillow. Chrissy, I hear you through the pillow. Chrissy raised her head. I said you're my big sister. Good. Now let's finish and get moving. After they finished eating, they cleaned up their area, and each grabbed their backpack and staff from behind the couch before exiting the tent. Chrissy rolled up the tent and attached it to the top of Karen's backpack before setting off toward the village. How is Mom and Dad's grave? Chrissy asked as they walked. It's looking well kept up, replied Karen. Karen could have said more about the tall marble headstones and all the nice flowers that surrounded each grave. She decided not to. She had gone to the gravesite earlier that day alone because she knew Chrissy was a very emotional person. She felt it was best to have Chrissy remain in the tent while she searched the ground around the gravesite for the package. It had been 5 years since their parents died. 5 years that Karen had been watching over her sister as they lived town to town, hiding their true identity, fear of the one who poisoned their parents might come after them. 1 month ago, a messenger from Mavlos found Karen for a message that their parents had left something for them and to come back. It was a message that swords and their tender. Maybe Mavlos had finally found her father's lost warhammer. She could only hope. She longed to hold something of her father to remember by. Chrissy, what do you remember most about Mom? Chrissy smiled. Mom's sugar root pie. Karen's watered in remembrance. You'd have to think of that right after, wouldn't you? What do you remember the most about them, Karen? Dad's battle cry as he charged full speed into a pack of androids. Merciless and emotional creatures were Dad's favorite enemy. Many hundred fell to the might of his warhammer. Chrissy slowed down her pace a little, longingly at her sister. You think it could have been an android that poisoned them? Doubt it. Unless told to do so, an android does not possess the qualities to plan and carry out an attack such as. After we speak with Mavlos, We should get some clue as to who it was who pulled. This sent a chill down Chrissy's spine and quiet until he saw the village in sight. There it is, Chrissy. Tinderwood Village. Not so different from what I remember. You think anyone will remember us? They might. Let's hurry them. Store. Tinderwood was set right in the middle of a thick forest. Apart from the paths leading from building to building, there were still plenty of places to conceal one's self from sight. Two girls made it to the store, having only seen one other individual walking around. That individual didn't seem to notice them. Karen liked to be cautious, but the last time they had been in this village was over 5 years ago. After all that time, how many were likely to remember them? Even then, how many would likely go running off to some Greek assassin to inform they were still alive? Karen pushed the thought aside as they neared the shop. The outside of the shop was nothing out of the ordinary to look at. It looked like any other building, with just a sign saying, "Items, get 'em quick." No one would think there would be any. But inside the shop, their eyes had plenty to gaze at. There were shelves upon shelves of adventure gear and everyday grocery items, but on one wall, masterpieces of art and style. Above the items on the wall hung 4 magnificent elk heads. Those had to be the trophies of Dad and the shopkeeper. Chrissy walked up to the wall to admire all the well-crafted armor and weapons. Karen browsed shelves for any supplies they were running low on. Those are my personal collection of wares from master craftsmen from lands far and wide. I'd be willing to part with them with any for the right price. Sudden speech startled Chrissy, and she turned to face a tall, burly man with black hair and a thick black beard. When the man saw Chrissy's face, his jaw dropped. Why, Dragon Toes, you have grown! Chrissy blushed. Call me Chrissy. Chrissy Coble. Don't worry, lass. Your secret's safe with me. It was a tragedy what happened to your parents. Say, is your sister around? Karen appeared from around a nearby shelf. Aye, she is. Hello, Mavlos. You look well, and your shop looks well stocked. Yes, well, we are a simple folk around here. You can never tell when the odd happening might come our way, requiring some out-of-the-ordinary items. What should I call you? I am known by the name Karen Carmichael. Then, Karen, it shall be. But please forgive my old mind might stray and call you Kay like the old days. Mavlos turned to the wall that Chrissy was staring at. Each one of those weapons has seen its share of battle with monsters left over from the war. Who wielded them? Asked Karen. Mavlos took an elaborate-looking axe from the wall and began turning it over in his large hand. He grunted. Each one of these was made for a specific purpose, a specific person. This axe, for example, was made for more than just chopping wood. He opened his mouth again, but no words came out. He hung the weapon back on the wall. None of these were meant to hang on this wall, he continued after clearing his throat. But by hanging them on this wall, I hope they will one day find a purpose. Karen could tell by the sound of his voice that the axe held more special memories than any of the other items on the wall. Maybe the axe belonged to someone special. She couldn't tell. And she wasn't going to ask Mavlos. She would ask when appropriate. She walked over to Chrissy near the wall of equipment. Impressive, but I doubt we have the money for such items. Sorry, Chrissy, but I can't afford anything special yet. Perhaps you won't have to, added Mavlos. The girls turned to face him with puzzled looks. Come this way. I have something for both of you. They followed Mavlos. Why does this? I know why. Okay. Sorry about that. They followed Mavlos to the back of the store, where he placed his hand on what looked like a normal stone on the wall, only to have it slide inwards with a click. There was a creaking sound as a door swung open near the stone. Through the door was a small room. Mavlos lit several torches that lined the room, shedding light on the room's contents. On a small table in the middle of the room sat two rather unremarkable backpacks, but they weren't just ordinary packs, at least not to Karen. She rushed up to them with awe on her face. Are these bags of holding? I've heard of them, but I've never seen one. Good eye. Yes, these were your father's. He and I worked a little modification so that they could be a bit more durable and not so easily punctured from either the inside or the outside by pointy objects. Objects like your sword there. May I see it? Karen unhooked the sword from her waist and handed it to Mavlos. He turned it over in his hand and noticed the rose on the crossguard. This was one of your mother's swords. I see that your sister has the other. He looked over and saw the other sword hanging from Chrissy's waist. Your mother was our Rose Knight. She would come to the aid of anyone in need, regardless of the situation. Visiting blacksmith took an entire month to craft these swords for her. When your mother wielded these, there wasn't a creature that could stand against her. He handed the sword back to Karen. These bags come filled already with various items that you might need in your travels. I would periodically check on them to make sure they were still in working condition, but then I found that I didn't need to do that. Funny thing about null space, things don't seem to wear out as quickly in there. Mavlos directed them to one wall, where hung two sets of clothing. One set was not much unlike what they were wearing now. The tunic was a dull green, tailored and thick. The long sleeves would help keep the wearer warm through cold nights. Around the bottom of the tunic was threaded a leather belt and buckled pouch. Below the tunic hung a pair of sturdy brown pants. That was ordered by your father. That's an explorer's outfit. Sturdy enough for a long day's climb, yet thin enough for agile movement when caught off guard. And for you, Kay. Meanwhile, Chrissy had begun to study the second set of clothes. They were more elegant looking, made of white cloth embroidered with gold trimming. Pink roses decorated the white material with golden leaves throughout. The flowing, long-sleeved dress seemed to react to every breath that Chrissy exhaled. That dress was made by your mother. She knew you were leaning towards the ways of a healer, the kinder side of life, so she prepared this outfit when you were of age. Chrissy didn't hesitate. She took the dress from its hanger, folded it into a square, and held it close to her chest. She did not know when she would wear it, but she loved it all the same. Thank you. Karen also took down her outfit and folded it up nicely and sat it on the table next to the bags. Yes, thank you, Mavlos, added Karen. These are splendid. Thank you for keeping them safe for us. Hold on now, we're not done yet, replied Mavlos. He pointed to another wall. It took a minute for the girls to see what he was pointing at, because at first it just looked like a bare wall of blue stone. But as they walked closer, they could clearly see two sets of full armor. We call them Celestial Full Flex Armor. There's a set for each one of you. Girls each reached out and touched each piece. They were so smooth, the material was blue like the stone walls and trimmed with thin strands of gold. What material is this? Have you ever seen mithril thread? Both girls shook their heads. Your father and 10 master smiths took buckets and buckets of mithril shavings and turned them into the finest thread I've ever seen. Those suits will never rip, yet they're light enough to stretch just enough that they're a completely different armor class than they appear. They will protect your entire body and, at the same time, be comfortable enough to sleep in. Mavlos turned to a section of the wall and took down a shield made from the same material as the armor. He turned to Karen. This is for you since you're a fighter. It's the same material as your suit, except it's been wrapped around a thin plate of steel. After a few minutes of silence, Mavlos turned to leave. I'll let you two look over your things in private. I will be out in the shop if you need. He left the room. Karen, do you see what Dad has left us? This is amazing. I love the vestments, but that armor. Karen, do you think I'm ready to fight wearing something like that? Don't worry, Chrissy. I will make you ready. She thought for a moment and then took the tent from her backpack and set it up there in the room. Let's store our packs in here and wear the bags of holding. I don't know how null space would react when placed inside another pocket. Chrissy removed the pack from her back. They stowed them inside the tent along with the two outfits and two sets of armor. Finally, Karen rolled up the tent and attached it to the bottom of her bag of holding. After putting the bag on her back, she proclaimed, "Wow, this is so much lighter than the pack I was wearing. Put on yours and see if you feel the same." Chrissy pulled on her bag and nodded. "Yes, it will be much easier to walk with this bag on my back over that old one." The girls left the room and re-entered the front of the shop. They found Mavlos straightening some items on the shelves. "Where have you girls been all this time?" he asked without turning around. "Hiding, mostly. In the towns that Dad founded," replied Karen. "That old tent still holding up?" She nodded. "It's holding its shape quite nicely." "A-frame tents tend to do that."
Mav, did Mom and Dad ever stay in the tent?
He laughed a great burly laugh. "Chrissy, your mom and dad set that tent up for you and your sister. They considered that your private space and never stayed in there a single night."
Mom and Dad were great warriors, continued Chrissy. Yet they lived simple lives. We never lived in grand houses or fancy hotels like heroes normally did. No, we stayed in little houses and boarded with others, but we always had our privacy.
"No, Mav." Karen broke in before Mavlos could inquire about taking a peek inside.
You cannot see inside. As you said, that is our private space, and you are not allowed.
Mav knew about null space. He had helped their father enhance the bags of holding. He had never been inside a null space set up for living in. For years, he tried to get their parents to let him venture inside for a peek, but he never got the chance. From the sound of things, he was never going to get the chance. Karen put her arm around her sister. "Let's go. I have an idea." The girls expressed their thanks once again to Mavlos and left the shop.
Where are we going, Karen?
"We'll see." Dun, dun, dun. You want the next one, Izzy?
Who do we got?
Kesh is next. It is in the Gmail. I definitely caught the D&D elements, like not sticking one bag of holding into another bag of holding, though that would have been super fun. I've seen that happen.
Oh.
Kesh is requesting that we credit the magazine.
Yes, correct. Let's see. All right, so Kesh is actually published. We've mentioned this before with the having been published in a magazine, and this one was Morpheus Tales. So this piece and Morpheus Tales appears to be out of the UK. It is. Go all the way down to page 41. Oh gosh. That's too many eyeballs. Okay. Seeds of Apocalypse by Kesh Butler. So it begins. It started like a scene from a book or a movie. It seemed like there was life on Europa, as though the Arthur C. Clarke classic had come to life. I laughed because I knew the truth. An unmanned probe had been sent to drill below the frozen moon's surface, that of the system's fifth planet, Jupiter, the system's largest entity after the sun itself. But the similarities ended there. The 24-hour news feed said that the submersible equipment had been attacked and potentially devoured by a massive tentacled beast. It almost looked like it had a body from the footage that had been transmitted and cut off in the middle, like you see in the movies. The 10 seconds of video made my chest swell with the pride of a parent. The demons had matured well, feeding off the souls I had provided them. At first, people reacted with fear. But then they organized and discussed the topic until it was tired, until finally they cried for the governments of the world to do something. Remarkably, all the politicians came to a consensus within a week. They decided to send a second mission as quickly as they could. The rockets blasted off and began the slow progression towards the mini system, arriving at the small moon a little over a year after the original transmission. The fastest mission in human history, they claimed. Human curiosity got the better of them, and it made me smile. My plan was unfolding perfectly. By the time the second capsule had landed, many had forgotten the beast that destroyed the first probe, catching their breaths as the forgotten questions and fears welled up to the surface of the world's collective consciousness. Everyone watched with bated breath as the probe drilled through the alien ice pack. The landing zone was only miles from the first probe's remains. As the second drill broke the surface, the frozen terrain beneath the device shook, causing the surveyor's internal systems to halt its programming and retreat to a safe zone away from the vibrations. At the same time, the orbiter began to spring back to life, focusing its cameras toward the surveyor. The digital feeds started rolling, catching footage that could only be described as phenomenal by the techs at NASA and history-making by the media across the globe. The debates began, analysts tearing the footage apart, trying to find hidden meaning behind the seven-tentacled creature's actions. Some claimed it was the end of the world, while others stated that all it meant was that life did exist elsewhere. It was at least semi-intelligent, and it wasn't going to accept exploration of its territory. Period. The question that hung in the air was, where had it gone when it jumped off the surface of the planet, and how had it destroyed the orbiter? No one had any ideas. No video of the creature had been captured after the probe stopped transmitting. Many across the planet panicked, worried that the creature was heading toward Earth to get reparations for invading its home. What they did not realize was that I had called forth my four demons of the apocalypse: Leviathan, Belial, Lucifer, and Satan. 3 years earlier. Come on. They gathered around me, 12 of my most trusted followers, 6 women and 6 men, all equal in power and fame across the planet. Movers and shakers alike. Several were heads of state and international conglomerates. Others were various celebrities. One was a televangelist, a fire and brimstone preacher. He was the true score. And 2 were writers. All had the eyes and ears of the world on them at all times. To protect them from each other's greed and deceit, they always wore robes and animal personas, referring to each by the name of the animal he or she was. I had become weary of the world and irritated by the presumptuousness of humanity, had decided to bring about its end. And why not? Is that not what the humans wanted? Always waiting on the next date of an apocalypse that would never happen. They'd work themselves up for the end of the world and be disappointed when the date would come and go without event. I concealed my identity, and the fact that I was both male and female with robes identical to my followers. They believed my face to be a mask like theirs, and my black feathered wings to be props worn for dramatic effect. They had yet to see the cloven hooves that were my feet. My plan that night was to reveal myself to them, and with their help, call forth the demons from the dark realms of eternity. Each member of the circle had sold their souls to me in one way or another, each giving his or herself through sins that devoured the soul. My goal, in the end, was to inspire as many souls as I possibly could to be ready for the end. Whether by fear or sin, the world would be ready for their arrival, for me to reveal my existence. You see, the church had gotten it all wrong, twisting and skewing the laws of the immortals to their own will, creating a mind control device much more effective in instilling obedience in the masses than belief. When the world was young and I had yet to become the being that stood in the darkened room, followers gazing reverently and awaiting my orders, it was simpler. Back before I had transformed and had taken a solid form, I had been abstract, having no physical form, and praised by man for breaking the godly laws and giving man the secret of fire, how to harvest it, use it, shape it, and start it. I had believed in man once, back in the early days of his history. Once they had learned to harness the creative nature of fire, they grew and began to organize and create their own things. Like a parent, I was proud, but like all children eventually do, they turned their backs on me, forgetting me, save for a few so-called lost souls who remembered what I had done for the race, honoring me by hosting games for the world at the time to see. An Olympiad in my honor, where the bravest and strongest warriors would compete amongst themselves to receive a prize, bestowed upon them by me and winning my favor. And in time, those who organized the Olympiads forgot me too, the games being recorded by history, but my role in them being lost in the sands of time. And now I had decided to use my power to give the so-called moral majority what they wanted. I was preparing on giving them an apocalypse, complete with monsters. Having these monsters come from space was a stroke of genius on my part, intended to get as many of the non-believers to fear me as well. Either way, I was going to gather as many of them as I could. I gazed down at my followers, deciding it was time to disrobe and reveal to them my true form. All but the ram-headed televangelist gasped as my robes fell to the floor. Had he known? Had he figured it out previously? He had not been shocked by my revelation as I had hoped. Without his fear, would I be able to control him? Would he continue to serve me? I had to put my doubts about him aside, for with doubts comes weakness, and with weakness comes loss of control. Losing control over my followers would be the worst thing that could happen. I looked him in the eyes, trying to stare him down, asserting my dominance. After a long minute, he lowered his eyes, and I knew I was in charge either way. I lifted my arms up and spoke. You are my most devoted and influential followers, and I have gathered the 12 of you here to help me accomplish the next step towards the new order, a step towards a new dawn for a new humanity. They all looked at me as I continued my speech. It will be hard, and it will require the best you can give. It will require your blood, sweat, and a few of your lives. But fear not, for all those sacrifices made will not be in vain. It will be the beginning of a new era, a new age of enlightenment for mankind. All but one looked at me with awe and anticipation for the changes that were to come. All but one began looking at each other. The televangelist, his mask mirroring my own face, looked back at me with eyes that reflected my passion for the plan. It was in the moment when our eyes met that I realized how I could use the true devotion I saw in his eyes. If I could have smiled, I would have. I knew that my plan would work. I had found the mouthpiece for my movement, and I hoped my right-hand man. For the first step in my plan, I will need 4 of the women to step forward and disrobe. I knew who I preferred to step forward. Lamb, dove, rabbit, and cat. The 4 weakest and most likely to crumble once it became apparent what was truly occurring in their useless society. Lamb, dove, and fox stepped forward. Fox, please step back. I have a different job for you. Her talent and intelligence had endeared her to become my favorite of the women. Briefly, she looked between herself and the others and stepped back into the line, bowing as she moved. Rabbit, Cat, I think you are the best suited for this task. They tentatively stepped forward with Lamb and Dove. Theirs would be the ultimate sacrifice, but I knew they would run if I told them the final plan, so I would have to lie to them. I could sense their apprehension as they stepped forward, and I watched them carefully. My original plan had been to perform the ceremony in view of the entire group, but I was beginning to think that I might have to do the final rites in private with each of the women. Tonight, we will begin the first step toward a new humanity. Each and every one of your contributions will ensure that this world will be reborn as a utopia, where all will be equal and justice will always be served. Ram's shoulders shuddered as though he was stifling a chuckle. He knew that the words passing from my lips were lies and half-truths. He could be my best friend, or my worst enemy if I didn't play my hand right. The four of you will become my greatest emissaries, my harbingers, I explained. The four horsemen, Ram interrupted reverently. I watched for any reaction among my four chosen, but all they did was look back and forth between each other nervously. I now had to move quickly before Lamb, Dove, Rabbit, and Cat figured out what was going to happen to them. I looked at Ram, signaling for him to remain quiet. With my blessings, the four of you will become the most powerful beings on the planet. The powers I will bestow on you will give you the ability to fulfill my plan and punish humanity for its insolence. I soothed the women. Please, remove your robes. I watched in mild anticipation as each of their white robes fell at their feet, naked bodies exposed to the others gathered in the room. Cash.
Yeah, Cash.
Dove crossed her arms over her almost flat chest, her sudden modesty amusing me, causing me to become
Firm.
yeah, essentially starts with an A. ROUS. Continuing on.
Around, yeah.
Around. Yeah, around. How convenient. Okay, we're gonna skip. I'm going, moving on. Okay, I think I'm good here.
We had a little bit of a fade to black moment, ladies.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
If you
Although
wanna-
there were extended wings, some magic, things. Okay.
If you're
As I
interested in reading the edited part, Ash is sharing a link in the Discord. Go see it yourselves.
Oh, and people think she's the innocent one. Just remember that.
You're the one who
And I
gave me that
realize
name.
I do. I was just getting ready to say I'm the one that said that because she only looks innocent.
Like Dove.
Like Dove. When doves cry.
You didn't hear
Okay.
anything, YouTube.
Didn't hear anything. No. I know you never did, but compared to me, people think you're innocent because you mask yourself way better than I do. Okay, as I regained control of my senses, I turned my palms upward, clenching my fists and causing the women to moan with the fluctuations in power. I manipulated them little by little, reconstructing them from the inside out.
Did you
My
confirm?
My children were coming into being. I could hardly contain the excitement over the fact that my plan was going to work. After all, who was there to stop me? Many humans would say God, but the being they worshipped cared as much for them as any human would an ant. To him, they were nothing, and I was simply removing vermin from the planet. Like I said before, the humans wanted it. Is it not apparent by their actions towards the planet? I knew my decision would be proven right in the years to come. 3.5 years later, 6 months had passed since the discovery on Europa. 3 months since the demons returned to Earth and began what they had been created for. Their destiny was the destruction of the human race, and they were performing their job very well. Leviathan, the one who had developed under the cold ice sheets of Europa, arrived first, splashing down in the Atlantic Ocean and immediately attacking ships and coastal communities. People panicked, as was their nature. Cameras caught it all on tape and beamed it to the world's living rooms. Shortly thereafter, the other three, having developed similarly on the other 3 Galilean moons, joined their fellow, tearing the major cities and countries apart, devouring people by the hundreds of thousands. It was beautiful, and I was satisfied. They sought me out when their first task had been completed. There was one more thing I wanted before I destroyed myself. I called my followers to my side, asking specifically for Ram and Fox, my chosen successors for the rebirth of humanity. They stood in front of me, Fox's belly swollen, the final gift I had given my followers. Fox, my pet, of all my followers, you have the greatest responsibility and power over the things to come. What you teach the seed growing inside you will determine how he rules this new world I have created for him. She cocked her head to the side curiously, the gray fur of the mask accentuating the curiosity in her body language. My lord, you speak as though you will not be present for his birth. The tone of her voice seemed worried, yet still metered and calm as she waited for my answer. I never intended to, my pet, but I have faith that you will do fine in raising our child. I was ready to welcome death. But why? She asked, concern and devotion apparent in her voice. I have witnessed mankind's evolution, and then the systematic destruction of their gift through thousands of years. I have grown tired of my existence. I want to rest as God himself does. He is dead, and so too shall I be after tonight. You are a suitable regent to rule until our child is grown and capable. I then waved my hand, dismissing the conversation. I was done, and there was nothing she could do or say to change my mind. She supplicated and stepped away from me, stifling tears. A waste on her part as far as I was concerned, but not enough to convince me to keep on living. I then addressed Ram. Please care for her. This is my last order to you. I stood and loomed over him. He bowed, glancing at Fox, and then out the window of the penthouse I had occupied since the end of the world began. If you try anything against her or my son, the demons will move against you. They will only follow her orders. I opened the window and looked down towards the empty sidewalk below. Yes, my lord. he replied hastily. I laughed to myself at his reaction. His greed and lust for power would be his eventual undoing. I noticed Fox had disappeared into the darkness of the chambers. Her undoing would be her grieving of my death, the misfortune of being a human woman. Then it is done, I concluded. I stepped out onto the ledge and looked around, knowing no one was there, but wanting to be reassured that nothing would hinder my exit from creation. As I turned, I bowed to Ram one last time. Hash!
Or do we need further editing? Censorship? Wait. I think I can infer and I can do a Twitch and YouTube appropriate ending. I turned and bowed to Ram one last time before I Yeetimus Skeetimused myself from the cliffside. The end.
And then the world went black. The end.
Well, Izzy has her meltdown. Quick note, ladies and gentlemen, if a person of the female persuasion ever comes up to you and says, quote, I want my guts rearranged, they do not mean to reconstruct them from the inside out using dark powers. That's okay. It's okay. Great story, Kesh. I really wish you were reading tonight, because our next submission is from Bitzer, who has put in a note for a voice. I apologize in advance. Because one of the characters apparently speaks in a German accent. My German accent is going to sound like a terrible B-movie villain. So, yeah, for anybody offended by it, sucks to suck. Sorry in advance. One other question, Bitzer, you didn't say, but I'm taking it from. Are these other two characters like? I see a lot of apostrophes and things. Is this supposed to be like clipped proper English, or is this supposed to be? Because I'm reading it Southern, which is just a default for me. But and also, I have a very limited range of female voices, folks. So if you want me to read something and you have a lot of female characters, you should probably pick somebody else. Clipped proper English. Oh boy. Put on your best Cockney. I will do my best. Really challenging me tonight. I appreciate it. All right. Here we have a chapter from Bitzer. If Bitzer wants to put in what the book is, they can do that. The nice thing about being underground for almost an entire 10-day was that one could appreciate the little things. Sunshine, pigeons, even rain was welcome. Cordelia, now calling herself Delia, felt like she could smile at a miserable gray sleet. Today, the sun filtered between the clouds and shone in rays caused by the miasma of the city. It was beautiful, and nobody else saw it that way. Conversations she heard all around her were all grumbling about the autumnal turning of the seasons, anticipating the coming snows and griping about shed leaves making streets slippery before the ice made it worse. Today, she had a long basket of a trolley to drag behind her. Since their shopping list included an assortment of seasonal gourds and root vegetables, All would be hefty burdens to bring back to Lord Vallister's mansion. Millie was with her, as always, providing incidental schooling in the little things that might give her away, like taking time for a full and formal curtsy instead of a brief maid's bob, or what Delia thought of as the servant's accent. If and when you're thinking it, then, murmured Millie. M, M instead of me or my, M instead of I'm. It's all, it's all about getting the words out as fast as possible so you can get back to being seen and not heard. None of the maids in my, she almost said, employ, last place ever spoke like that. I think you're lower than those maids now. We're the ones who keep things clean and neat and, oh my, don't look, you're being watched. Delia looked. Gosh, what are the odds that he was in the very same market on the very same day in a city as large as Deepwater? He was holding a parsnip in one hand and had a large basket on his other arm, standing as still as a statue and staring, mouth agape, straight at her. If you want me to beat him up. That's not the right accent. Anyway, offered Millie. It's all right. I know him. He won't hurt me. She left the trolley with Millie and marched straight up to him. Would you like some charcoal and birch bark to make a portrait? Here we go. He startled. Was? Nein, I did not mean to stare so rudely, Fräulein. I swear I once met you in a very dark place. You're even more magnificent in the daylight. I should mind how I go. Oh. Oh! Sparklight! Spark Night! She blurted. That was him she bounced off of before she undertook her journey in the Undercity. They meet again and again. Seemed to recall running into you a night before that, she said, trying her servant's accent. That was you. You squished rather delightfully, as I recall. The smile he had for her was real, and inspired by an interest that the Marchess Cordelia had never sparked before. She found it flattering. She also felt the heat rising to her cheeks. You could squish again if you so desire. I think the master might have objections to that. And I have other promises to keep too, he said. Such a pity. Perhaps something else? Something socially acceptable? Something after I finish fetching carrots. He gestured with the parsnip. So, that's a parsnip. Carrots are the sweet ones, as is purple. She pointed the way to a different display. You put parsnips in a meal, guess how bitter. The real smile faded into a far more vicious grimace as he contemplated the vegetable in his hands. I was fed these, he said slowly, as carrots when I was ein kleiner Tuffel. I'm feeling an intense desire for some vengeance against some very specific people. It was years ago, and they've probably forgotten, soothed Delia, putting her hand on his. Put the anger down with the parsnip, eh? There's time enough for carrots now. A deep breath, a long sigh. Ja, vengeance only makes more vengeance, and I am not a vengeful Tuffel. Dankeschön, Fräulein. How may I know you? He did, as she advised, put the parsnip down. She could not utter the phrase, my name is, to his face and put a falsehood after it. They call me Miss Delia. Well met, Miss Delia. He performed a courtier's flourished bow for her. 3 loop-de-loops of a hand as it descended away from both body and brow as he bowed. I have given my name as Koch's Shaden, though my allies call me Kosh. Allow me to show you how to pick the good carrots. Certainly. He matched pace with her without a sound, which made her a little jealous of his technique. Years more of practice, more likely. The carrots ranged from... This is going exactly where you think it's going, folks. The carrots ranged from plump and firm to thin and limp, and everything in between. The ones harvested early and therefore going rotten were sold cheap to the poor or the workhouses for their gruel. They didn't sell there. Well, There were always denizens somewhere that would eat them. Delia imparted her recently acquired knowledge.
You don't want ones too large or fat, as they get woody and unpleasant in a meal. The skinny ones may be sweet, but if they ain't firm, leave 'em bide. Nice middle-sized ones ain't no bigger than a handspan are the best bet. No thicker than 2 fingers across.
I can't nail that accent to save my life. Kosh had come over with adolescent giggling. His face was slowly turning purple with the blood rising to it. Delia realized the shape of the carrot she held and its orientation, specifically its gentle curve towards the sky. The vendor had his bottom lip firmly between his teeth and was gently choking on his own chuckles. Oh no. She dropped it as if it burned her and covered her poor red face. The laughter found her anyway, though it was still rather close to tears. I'm sorry, laughed Kosh. I am so sorry. No, you're not, cackled the vendor. It was Kosh who wiped the giggles off his face first. Thank you for your kind advice. A chuckle put up a valiant fight. Could you stand to advise me more at a later day? Delia never got to answer. An aviad swooped down out of the sky and clapped a hand on Kosh's shoulder. There the fuck you are. Honestly, do you flirt with anything capable of conversation? The birdman scooped carrots willy-nilly into Kosh's basket and handed some gold to the vendor. Come on, the day is wasting. Holding Kosh by his collar, he started to drag the hellkin off somewhere else. Off elsewhere. Only when they're magnificent, said Kosh, waving to her as he was forced to walk backwards away. Dun dun dun. My apologies.
Ash said she was loving the accent because there are good German accents, and then there's German accents so bad they're good.
I definitely fall into the latter.
And then everything else is bad.
All right. Miss Izzy, you are up with Julie next.
Alrighty.
Yeah, that Cockney accent kept flip-flopping on me between like Southern and Australian and anything else other than a Cockney accent. Doesn't help that it was also in my higher register, so I'm not where I do my best impressions.
Go.
I do believe it is time for
Yes!
Crossroads.
Time for Crossroads. Huh, the infamous carrot chapter. Okay. Crossroads. I apparently got a jacked one, or we put your name too low because it's like right there. It's whatever. It's a book with words in it. I know you can't see that. There you go. Published. Okay. It'll all fade to black, right? Because I could do chapter 9. Could do chapter 9. Come on, pages. There we go. Oh, that's the prologue. Okay. I know Julie always says, a throwaway line about we don't talk about what happened in Mexico. Everybody was like, "Oh, now we need to know what happened to Mexico." And she always talks about how, well, I guess you're going to have to buy the book to find out what happened in Mexico. Or you just have a mischievous co-host that has a copy of the book and a microphone. Chapter 9. Mexico. The sun was setting in Cancun when Nikki, Piper, and about 4 others had gotten off a 6-hour private flight. They hadn't planned on going to Mexico. Nikki and Piper were earmarked to be in Italy for 2 weeks to pay tribute to Nikki's great-grandfather for his birthday. But when someone goes on the run with nearly $8 million of Don Valence's money, plans reverted quickly. Neither Nikki nor Piper were happy about the development, but when push came to shove, they didn't have a choice in the matter. Don Valence didn't trust anyone else to go on this pickup. He needed this rat brought back alive, and there weren't too many on staff that he trusted to complete the task. After all, he was still trying to make his way through the list of suspects that had contact with the swindler, so all could stand before him and pay the price for screwing him over. Nikki had a bad feeling about Edgar Cannon from the moment he laid eyes on him. Don Valence had brought him in at the recommendation from another family to deal with the finance side after Ralph finally took retirement. Well, Nikki never trusted him. Don Valence swore things would run smoothly, and with some updated practice that so many of the other families were already reaping the benefits of. While things went well for the first year or two, Nikki and most of the others had noticed things were starting to get sketchy. Don Valence was starting to believe the once trusted muscle were skimming off the top, and some were severely dealt with on Edgar's word. Valence Jr. kept his nose out of it, while Nikki did a lot of digging to figure out the truth. It took Piper and him 2 years to come up with enough evidence to even get a sit-down with Don Valence for him to calmly hear them out. By that time, Edgar had skipped town. Nearly a month later, word had gotten around about a big-time roller in Cancun matching up with Edgar's description. Seemed like someone that would have been smart to lay low was racking up debts all over Mexico, using Don Valence's name just before skipping town to the next location. They had him located currently in a pretty pricey resort. Seems that Edgar had a taste for gambling and fancied himself a card shark. When he got caught counting cards at the last resort, he nearly got his hands broken, but left town before the family down there had got their hands on him. You know, this isn't what I had in mind when I said I needed to get out of town for a bit. Piper pushed her sunglasses up her nose, getting in the BMW. At this point, I would rather be driving a Maserati down the coast in Sicily. But at least we aren't chasing our tails. We know where he is and should be able to wrap this up quickly, Nikki grumbled, climbing in next to Piper. Yes, it should be quick. I don't see him coming up without kicking up a fuss, Piper said under her breath. I know Papa wants him to be delivered alive. I'm hoping with whom he sent with us, he will get what he's asked for. Dom maybe will play by the rules, but the other two might have other plans as they were part of the wrath when this all started. Piper looked over at Nikki to see him taking in the scenery as they drove through town. Piper knew Valence Sr. had put quite a bit of pressure on Nikki to bring Edgar back to face the music, and she wasn't happy about seeing Nikki used as some sort of pawn in the old man's game. To her, Valence Jr. should have been the one to finally get his hands dirty. But he had gotten out of it due to a technical issue. Those technical issues involved a beautiful blonde that had just been sent to another of the families in Texas along with a very large bottle of scotch to drown his sorrows when this one turned him down for his age. While Piper should respect Nicky's father, she couldn't stand the man that lived his life either pretending to be a socialite, headlong in the next scheme to weasel himself to the top of the family, or ass deep in whatever expensive liquor the old man kept around the house. There were many reasons Valance Sr. took Nicky after his mother died, and unfortunately, these weren't even the tip of the iceberg. Piper wasn't sure if she ever wanted to know the whole story. She knew, regardless, she would be what Nicky needed. As they approached the large villa, Nicky sighed. They were supposed to be staying at the hotel, but last-minute plans had changed, and Don Valance didn't want Edgar spooked if he happened to run across them in the casino. They had to be cold and calculating, staking him out for a few days so they could make the best plan in which to snatch and grab. It was okay. None of the men had noticed this was going to take longer than promised. Hell, what did they care? They were in Mexico with half-naked women parading around without a care in the world. Nicky and Piper's worry is whether they could keep them on task long enough to grab Edgar and get the hell out of town without them adding to the population. We're keeping it tight around here until Edgar is in hand. This isn't a vacation, Nicky barked, seeing every man with them drooling over the eye candy. Isn't that going to take a few days? I mean, mixing a little business with pleasure isn't always a bad thing, Carl said, shooting a look over to Nicky. You heard the boss. No grab-assing until the rat is in hand. Dom spoke up before Nicky had a chance to respond. There had been some talk around the house and family for years over Nicky and Piper's closeness. It was very much a don't ask, don't tell situation, and depending on who brought it up, how much Nicky was going to react. He could go from 0 to someone picking themselves off the floor in 2 seconds flat. Piper always played it off as they were friends, comrades, or partners in crime. She played it closer to the vest than most, and while most speculated on why, they always made it where no one could prove anything. Carl, if you and the others plan on having all the parts you left with returned back to the States attached, I'd stick to the job. Piper's voice was barely over a whisper, but the threat was clear. Yes, ma'am, they all clearly said, shuffling bags into the villa and getting the room assignments. Sometimes I wonder if they are more scared of you or me, Nicky smirked, grabbing the last of their bags out of the trunk. A healthy dose of fear is never a bad thing. As I am your right hand, the fear of me is also the fear of you, Piper said, running her hand over the dagger strapped to her thigh. I guess I should be lucky you didn't pull that during the flight. You should be lucky I got on the plane. You know it's faster than driving. And you know why I don't fly. Now, we are going to play the circle jerk game, or are we going to get ready to catch a rat? Piper glared at him, proving her point. Well, go get showered. We leave for dinner in 30. Snatching up her bags, Piper strutted into the house to start phase 1 of this thrown-together plan. Nicky couldn't help but admire the woman she had become, and with little help from him, he had to admit. She was a spitfire if he had ever seen one, but it was the stone-cold rage that pushed her forward that Nicky tried to chip at little by little. She would never let her guard down, even when it was just them, which had saved his life a few times, even if he didn't want to admit that one. When are you going to tell her? Dom said, taking a cigar from his pocket and offering it to him. Tell her what? Nicky's forlorn look was gone, and now he was snapped back to the reality of the situation they had found themselves in. Come on, Nicky. Don't play stupid with me. We have been thick as thieves since we were kids. I honestly don't know what you're talking about, Dom. Piper and I are just partners, and not romantic ones either, Nicky said, feeling that pang in his chest that he had felt since the day he had seen her in that bar.
You're kidding yourself, man. But hey, I get it. Don Valance wouldn't be happy with the choice, even if it is none of his old-ass business,
Dom said, throwing the rest of the cigar down and stomping it out with his boot. Don't wait. Forever is a long time to spend alone. Dom threw his bag over his shoulder and proceeded to walk into the house. Nicky wasn't as clueless as he made others believe he was, but he couldn't risk Piper's life. Well, more than he already did. She chose to stay after she was healed up. She chose to train and become part of his world. He had told himself for years it was because she didn't want to go back, not that she couldn't ever go back. Nicky feared the day she would choose to leave, but for now, he didn't have to worry about that. Nicky had the men staked out at several different hotels to garner information about Edgar. Since he didn't just play in the hotel he was staying at, it made more sense for them to spread out and track his movements. They wouldn't grab him unless they had a clear shot not to be noticed. Nicky and Piper's job was to be seen and find out as much information as they could about the resort he was staying at. It was nearly 3 days of headhunting before Edgar had slipped up. Every night, Nicky and Piper would go to the tables, gambling for a few hours, acting like tourists. For the first few nights, they sat side by side at the tables. But as they caught the attention of Edgar, Nicky removed himself to watch Piper work her magic. Edgar, who seemed too drunk to notice who they were, started flirting with Piper almost immediately after Nicky went a few tables over to play blackjack. She played that to her advantage. After all, they only needed to know which room was his to do a snatch and grab. Edgar thought he was playing big shot betting double or nothing on a double king river. Piper called and knowingly lost. They played a few more hands before Edgar got cocky enough to slip his hand over onto Piper's thigh. You know, if you lose this time, you're going to have to come up with something a little more than money. I always pay my debts. Piper batted her eyelashes at Edgar. I bet you do. Edgar licked his lips, looking at Piper in a short, flowy lace skirt and matching poet shirt. When the last card flipped over, Piper knew it was showtime, as she feigned disappointment at the turn of her luck. Looking over at Edgar, she had to fake shock that she had lost for the 5th time in a row. Racking his winnings into the black velvet bag laying next to him, he grabbed Piper by the wrist. I think I know how you survived this long by yourself, but I think it's time for you to show me what I have won. Piper didn't act surprised at his words, though she knew she would have to take a long shower to get the smell of the cheap tequila off of her. She giggled to herself that if they could just get him near an open flame, he would take care of the job himself. He surely smelled flammable. As he dragged her to the elevators to go upstairs, Piper started dropping random items to make sure Nicky could follow her path. She knew he would have already been on the phone with the guys, letting them know Edgar had taken the bait. It was up to her now to keep him within arm's reach until the guys came and claimed him. She was thankful this would be her last night in Mexico. Edgar had his hands all over her as they entered the elevator alone. She playfully pushed him away, knowing she could only have to play along for a little while longer. The boys would either bust down the door within minutes of their arrival or be standing outside the elevator as they got to the floor. Either way, Piper's patience for being the bait was wearing thin as the drunk Edgar began to take liberties that most men would get stabbed for. She knew the stipulations to being paid for this job teetered on him being brought back alive. With the way he was touching her, Piper wanted to put this man down like the vile vermin he was. By the time they had reached the 23rd floor, Piper had accidentally kneed him in the balls 3 times and elbowed him in the face twice. He was unsteady on his feet as they exited and headed down the hall toward his High Roller Suite. She offered herself to lean on as she took the key card from his pocket, letting them into the room. What Piper had seen when she entered the room made her want to vomit. The room was trashed, with so many bottles and rotten food containers. You would think there had been a frat party there for a week with no maid service. They would definitely have to slip the cleaning crew a huge tip for dealing with this horrendous mess. As she dropped him in the middle of the living room, she heard screams coming from the bedroom. Pulling her gun from her purse, Piper eased open the door to find a young woman tied to the bed. Putting a finger to her mouth, she cleared the room until she had determined she was the only one in there. She untied the woman, checking her out from head to toe to make sure she had not been harmed. "What's your name?" "Isabella," she cried, rubbing feeling back into her wrists. "I'm Piper. I'm going to get you out of here." "Oh, he's going to be back any minute." Her eyes darted about the room. "Because he's passed out on the floor, and well, let's just say I have some friends that are going to be coming to take care of him." Piper reached into her purse, handing the woman a large stack of money. "Take this and run." The woman didn't think twice as Piper walked her to the door. She knew the fear in the woman's eyes all too well when she looked back at her stepping onto the elevator. Edgar would pay the price for what he had done the same way she hoped Xander would pay for all he had done to her. For now, Piper had to put the past aside and deal with the present. She waited for nearly 20 minutes when she finally picked up her phone to figure out where the guys were to pick up this trash. "Where the hell are you?" Piper screeched into the phone when Nikki picked up. "What floor?" Nikki barked. 23, penthouse 3. "Be right there." Piper had slammed the phone down and found a sturdy enough chair to hoist Edgar's body into. She even used the ropes that he had tied the woman up with as a lovely little touch. He would soon know what it was like to be helpless and beg for his life, knowing that the end result would be Valance Sr. using him for fertilizer for his roses. There was no way out of this one, and Piper wasn't sure if Edgar had caught onto that as of yet. The knock on the door startled her, as it almost sounded like the police and not 5 men here to collect Edgar. Piper looked through the peephole and sighed. Thank God the cavalry had finally arrived so they might be able to get the damn show on the road. Opening the door, Nikki had busted in first, followed by Dom, Carl, and the others. Nikki had rushed to see if she had been hurt, while the 4 swept the penthouse from top to bottom. "I'm fine. There is no one else here. But we are going to have to leave a rather large tip for the maid services." "Edgar was nasty," Piper said, trying to get Nikki to stop. "Where is he?" "Drunk, slightly unconscious, tied to a chair," Piper told him in her usual sarcastic tone. "Let's get him and get the hell out of here." Nikki's hand lingered a little too long on her arm as he made his way out of the foyer and into the massive living room. "Damn, Piper! Think you could leave us a little something to do next time?" Carl complained, as it wasn't often since she joined the crew that he had anything to really do. "Technically, he did most of it to himself. I just proved a point that a man should never put his hands, unless welcomed, on a lady." She feigned innocence as the others busted out laughing. Nicky stood there with a fire in his eyes that Piper didn't understand. "And since she has done all the work, I say you 4 can take him back to the villa and lock him up. We leave out bright and early," Nicky said, staring daggers at the men that stood before him.
"You heard the boss," Dom said, shaking his head. He knew Nikki had panicked when he had lost her at the elevator and had no idea what floor they had gone to.
Dom and the others had been searching the floors for any sign of her when Nicky had texted and told them the 23rd floor. He wished that Nicky would be honest not only with himself, but with Piper. It had been hours since they had gotten back to the villa with Edgar in hand. Nicky had tried for 2 hours to get a hold of the pilot to no avail, and when he finally reached the co-pilot, he had found out they both had been drinking. He told them to sober up and call Dom when they knew a takeoff time. Unfortunately, Nikki knew it would be sometime the next day before they could deliver the package back to Don Valance. While the rest of the guys were to stay on guard duty, Nikki decided to make the best out of a less than ideal situation of having to spend one more night in Mexico. He was grateful that Dom backed him up on keeping Carl and the others at the house. The last thing anyone needed was 3 Italian men chasing tails all around Mexico, leaving gifts that wouldn't appear until long after they were gone. Don Valance would also have their heads if by chance Edgar disappeared in their pursuits, and Nikki couldn't have that. Walking down the hall toward Piper's room, he had hoped she would accompany him out that night to a little spot he loved to visit when he happened to be in town. He would give her the well-deserved night out that he had been promising her for longer than he cared to remember. Unfortunately, something like this had always come up, and here they were, off to do his grandfather's bidding. But when he could find little moments like these where he could steal her away from everything, he took them with no questions asked. Knocking on her door, Nikki prayed that the day hadn't been too much on her, and she would go and have a drink with him. "Carl, I already told you to fuck off!" Piper screeched, throwing the door open to reveal Nikki fuming for some odd reason. "Sorry, Carl was just here 10 minutes ago, and I thought he was back for round 2. Do I need to have a word with him?" Nikki was already planning a way for him to be left in Mexico, hog-tied naked to a cactus. "No, I handled it. I don't know why he seemed to think I was going to help him out after all the sly comments he's been making. He also seems to think, by his passes not being reciprocated, that I belong to someone else. Explaining to that asshole that I belong to myself and no other doesn't seem to be sinking in." Piper fumed, wrapped in a towel, taking clothes out of her suitcase. "I'll have him dealt with once we get back home. His mouth is overloading his ass. But in other news, the pilots have to sober up before we can head back." Piper hung her head, hoping that they would be on their way to Italy, not waiting for 2 men to sober up so they could get back to Texas. "So it's going to be tomorrow?" "Yep, but there is one bright side." "And what would that be?" Piper flipped her hair out of her face from being bent over the bed. "There's a little place around the corner. Good food, music, and a stunning view of the water." "Fine, but you're buying." Piper's playful smile played on her lips. It was a beautiful outdoor spot that overlooked the beach, even more glorious than he had remembered, though it had been more than 5 years since he had set foot there. As the sun set over the water, Nikki couldn't think of a better place to be or a more perfect person to be sharing that moment with. Piper was strong, beautiful, and had an attitude that would put most grown men to shame. When they were alone together, they were just 2 people enjoying each other's company. They ate and talked about what was hopefully next when they got back home. They were pretty sure the Italy trip was off, but Don Valance always had something up his sleeve to keep them on the move. Piper seemed to always be in a perpetual state of motion, but when it was just her and Nikki, time seemed to stand still, as if they were trapped, for however long they were allowed, in their little bubble. Staring off into the orange and pink fading lights, one margarita turned into 2, which turned into 3, and as the drinks kept flowing, so did the conversations. Hopes, dreams, and futures of what ifs proceeded to be spoken out loud as if they might somehow come true. The way thieves would steal precious gems, they were stealing the thoughts of times that couldn't be. Before anyone knew what was going on, Nicky and Piper had found themselves on the dance floor, spinning around like there was no one else in the world. As Nicky went in for one of those famous dips, he had almost gone too far, which would have landed both of them on the hard wooden dance floor. He recovered, and when they came back together, Nicky had softly kissed her on the neck. Piper's already overstimulated system begged for him to do it again, though she would never admit it. When she had suggested they get tattoos so they would always remember that night, Nicky took her to the first shop he could think of to make it so. She didn't know if it was the alcohol talking or the fact he was the only... Sorry. Or the fact he was the only thing not spinning. But after the tattoos, she begged him to touch her, to look at her like she was a woman and not just the person that had his back. Nicky was more than willing to oblige her every whim that night or any other. Therefore, when he asked her to spend the night with him in his bed, she figured, what could be the harm in obliging him? When Dom came knocking the next morning, heads were pounding and the sun was too bright to be peering through the windows. Piper, hearing the pounding on the door, had to jump up and run into the closet to keep from being seen. Hey, boss, the pilot's called. We can be wheels up in 30. His gruff voice cut through the hangover. Fine. Tell everyone to be ready to leave out of here in 20. Nicky moved to a sitting position. As he flexed his arms back and ran his hands through his hair, he revealed a glimpse of something that wasn't there yesterday. Will do. By the way, did Piper come home with you last night? Dom smirked with a knowing look in his eyes. The answer was clear, as he could see her silhouette in the shadows on the floor, along with the remnants of yet another night the two would never talk about. Yeah, she came home with me last night. Cutting his eyes toward the closet. Is she not in her room getting ready to leave? Maybe she went around the corner for coffee. You know she can't function without it, Nicky said, smirking at the fact he was openly staring at her luscious body trying to hide in the nearly empty closet. Nope, not in her room, but I'll keep an eye out for her. Dom chuckled, trying to look anywhere but where Nicky had his eyes trained. Yeah, I'm sure she will turn up before we are due to leave. Go make sure everyone else is good to go. I want nothing left to chance getting Edgar back to Don Valance. Nicky nodded with a sly grin spreading across his face. Dom left the room, holding the secret he had known all along. This wasn't the first time he had almost caught them in bed together, and if they wanted to play the same old game of nothing happened, who was he to say anything? He hoped Nicky would come to his senses about her before time ran out for the both of them.
Piper poked her head out of the closet once she heard the door close behind Dom. That had been a too close for comfort call, and secretly she was glad it had been
Dom to come knocking that early in the morning and not one of the others. They already had a long flight back to deliver Edgar, and she didn't need the whispers from the other men. Walking over to Nicky, who now had his feet on the floor, she stood in front of him, running her hands through his wavy hair. He laid his head on her stomach and ran his hands up the back of her legs. A single tear she would never let him see escaped her eyes before she tore away from his grasp. She walked across the room, gathering clothes, when the sting of her fresh tattoo caught her attention. Piper didn't remember much of their drunken escapades, but the fact she still couldn't find her bra said volumes of what had happened the night before. They had sworn to each other this was the last time. To the ache in both their hearts, they would never speak of the promises they had made to each other under the star-littered sky. A pact was always made that nothing would ever change between them. While that wasn't the first night they had found solace in each other's arms, it was certainly the most memorable one. Nicky would have a lasting reminder of the spade on his inner left arm and a visible reminder of the same spade on Piper's left shoulder blade. Done. Done, done.
Seems I returned at the perfect time.
I gotta say, like that was, you know what? Published last year, right? Just a little over a year ago. And while good, I can already tell week after week, Julie's writing is even better. Yes, so that's what happened in Mexico. They got matching tattoos. That's all that happened. They just bunked together. That's it. Yeah. You know, you have sleepovers with your friends.
Yeah, and pillow fights.
Yeah.
Next up we have Patrick. But if you want a break from reading, I can take a turn. We had another last-minute submission pop in.
If you would like to, that would be great, because I think I need to go take some pain reliever real quick. And then we'll is Patrick here?
No, his work was just suggested in the team chat.
Right, yeah, I know.
But yeah, we had a
The whole
lot.
getting the author's permission to go, where should I go in this thing? You know, because I'm Vanna White. I got the white hair. Oh wait, that's Betty White. My bad.
And we all know that Izzy is like, 6'2" in heels with the statuesque figure of a piece of printer paper.
Yeah, and you know, when a student film wants to cast Dritz as being 5'8" to 6 foot, oh my fucking god, no! Dritz Jordan is fucking 5'4".
That's my actual height. But I would have to shave my face.
Yeah, and that's not happening.
And I would have to learn how to talk like this all the time.
Legitimately, sure. We found out about this. I found about like what I went searching for it, and yeah, I found all the details. I'm like, are you freaking? It's a student thesis film, short film, based on a short story that Salvatore wrote about Dritz. And everything in their synopsis of what they are looking for Dritz, spot on. Then it says height 5'8" to 6 foot. Bitch!
Hey, I'm not going to fault them. I know that it's not accurate. But you know what? Sex sells. And nobody likes a short king. Bed. Anyway. Don't you come back here. Go take your pain relievers and your fucking sass somewhere else.
I'm a Shar.
Okay,
Short
ladies.
kings are superior.
Okay. Before chat comes for my throat here. Okay. Not in for. There's a difference. I want every single one of you who said girls love short guys to go and look at the best-selling books in the female romance and female fantasy romance and female fucking romantasy and dark fantasy and all that fucking all the girly books with the smut in them and find the description of the guy. And every single one of them is 6 foot plus with a deep ass voice and a six pack that you could wash fucking bricks on, okay? I don't want to hear it. Y'all talk about double standards and beauty standards and shit.
I beg to differ, because all of these do not have character descriptions in them.
You're right. And respectfully to those books, I am talking about the vast majority of the public with 1 million plus books, copies sold.
That's because that's fantasies. Look, let's talk about dark romance here for a second. Okay? Everybody out there who's like, "Oh, I love dark romance," blah 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 blah. If they're actually honest and open their motherfucking mouths like quite a few of them do, if any man were to do that to them in real life, they would be carrying their ball sack home. Okay? Now, look, look, look. There's what we like in our books, and there's what we like in reality. All right? Now, I can also tell you the best in bed partner that I ever had was the shortest in more than one way. So, I got no problem with a short king.
He also raw dogged fucking Viagra up his nose, so.
Who did?
Mr. 8 Hour.
No, he didn't.
Got him if you get that name.
Oh, it's called being.
I don't want to know.
19.
We got off on a tangent.
It's called being 19 and 21. Or 20. He was 20 and I was 21.
I didn't even know.
Being young, dumb, stupid, all the energy in the world, and lots of alcohol.
I still don't see you taking your pills, madam. Alright, we're all going to sit here and silently watch Izzy swallow.
That is absolutely correct, Deathhead. We can write reality. We can write about average height or shorter men. We can write about Amazonian women with short men. We can write those things, but that doesn't mean that the market out there is going to be clamoring for them.
I have a counterpoint to what Deathhead said.
Okay.
The suits want one thing at the end of the day, and that is to see bottom line go up. They are not pushing anything because they will do their market research and they will go, here's the same exact story with a guy who's 5'4" and a guy who's 6'4". Which one sells more copies and hits our target audience better? And if 6'4" wins, that's what they're gonna push. Yep. They don't push their own agenda. They sell what makes them money. And the fact that very tall, very muscular, masculine, overly masculine, deep-voiced men are the ideal male protagonist or male love interest for female fantasy makes them the most money.
Exactly, because it's fiction. But when I'm sitting here and we love short kings, we don't care about men's height, size actually does not matter. It's that when we're talking about realness. There's fantasy and then there's realness. And women who can't be honest about that.
I mean,
yes. Shar, give me a short mobster. I need a short mobster.
Fully transparent. I'm speaking from anecdotes, personal experience, and a place of bias because I spent my entire life being passed up by the taller guy. I straight up proposed to multiple women who said, hey, A, you're too short, and B, your last name is a monstrosity, so no.
I mean, your last name is a monstrosity, but hey, there we go. And again, there's also maturity level. Okay, I am in that phase of my life where I have very limited spoons and even fewer fucks to give, right? And I'm going to be honest because I don't got much time left. And by ain't much time left, I've got half my life left. But that's not enough time. I have 1,400 books on my TBR, and all you motherfuckers keep writing more books that I want to read. Okay? This is...
Kesh, are you asking about my last name? I'm not going to say it on stream, but you should You have access. You have access to the email,
Email.
the HMPP inbox, right?
Right. It comes through.
I could have sworn I wrote it as my Gmail account that has my full name. Maybe not. Anyway, we are.
No, we are way off topic.
I'm gonna read Death's submission now,
There we go.
and then we'll get back to Izzy reading Patrick's after that. As I said, this is a submission from Death's Head. This is Chapter 1, titled Cold Gods of Old. Death's apologized for not putting in a pronunciation guide, so I will do my absolute best. Please let me know if I got anything wrong, Death's, not as criticism, but just so I can improve myself. I hope I get most of it right. Once upon a time, there lived a prince and princess who had little hope. For 60 years, Aldegar had ruled the mountainous principality renowned for its waterfalls, iron, and forested vales. He and his wife, Ellie, had been fair judges and able leaders, earning praise from the folk thing to which they answered. Oh, submitted something else. Do I need to pause? I'm 2 lines. Actually, okay. I can pull up the second one. Last minute pivot. Oh, good. Okay, this is a different submission from Death's. Chapter 1, Toys. I really hope this is a theme. The clattering rattle of metal and wood filled the streetcar as Arthgo Lusk rode along the high street, bound on a vital mission. Beside him sat an older woman with large bags of groceries on either side of herself, while a small, fluffy dog made its home on her lap. On the other side was no one, for Arthgo had managed to sit on the edge of the bench, giving him a better view of the cobblestone street, the motorman operating the car. Outside, the sights of city life passed him by. A knot of young men and women gathered around a shouting man flanked by red and black banners. An old man tossing crumbs to birds along his knee-high grandson. A few workmen putting warning sirens up in a fountain square. A team of painters putting a fresh coat on a house with a faux turret beside the door. A policeman blowing his whistle as he chased down 3 boys along the sidewalk, one of them darting out and jumping on the streetcar. All of this rolled by the streetcar in the blink of an eye, along with a dozen other things which Arthgo's vision skimmed over without properly noticing. All he was looking for was a particular statue which marked his stop. Several statues rolled by. A bronze mermaid amongst dolphins in a fountain. A revolutionary hero holding a flag aloft. A bust of a sour old man on the side of a church. Still, he took a moment to glance at the budding little anarchist crouching beside him to say, "There's a reason your forebears wore scarves over their faces, young man." Huh? What? The boy glanced at him, confused. What are you blabbering about? Vandalism is a potent tool, but a risky one. I was offering advice, Arthgo said. You saw what I did, and you think I should do more? I have no way of knowing that, Arthgo chuckled. Only that sometimes remaining inside the bounds of a nation's laws, and then, at last, the streetcar rolled into the 5-pointed square, the intersection which had, long eons before, been the center of the city. Here the Lady of the Moon lorded over them, pedestal, her dress bearing a nasty gouge where the royal sigil had once been. Unable to finish his sentence, Arthgo rang the bell, signaling that this was his stop. The motorman slowed the car and let him step down onto the cobblestones. He gave a final salute to the boy and he was off, wending his way around the knots of people gathered at the Hanged Man Cafe, to the smallest of the 5 streets. He had only a few paces to walk, for there, squished between the cafe and the witch's boutique, was the toy store, which had provided 1,000 happy memories for himself and his children. The same dioramas were in the windows, along with the same room for rent sign, which referred to a glorified broom cupboard the proprietor thought worthy of being rented as an apartment. The familiar clunking of the doorbell sounded as Arthgo stepped inside. The smell of dust and treated wood hung in the air, giving the place a homey, familiar feeling. Behind the counter, as ever, was his old friend Domos Lecric, or Good Dom, everyone from the newspaper days called him. As ever, the old radical had grown surprisingly rotund as of late. The thin, whip-like editor Arthgo remembered from his youth slowly morphed into a jolly old man. No, not old man. That would make me old as well, Arthgo corrected himself, steering away from the counter and walking between shelves in search of his prize. His youngest daughter desired a set of interlocking plastic building blocks and poles which could be rearranged into all manner of shapes. I recall one set being able to make a fort with little men, and another a battleship. Yet as Arthgo looked over the shelves of dolls and puppets and game boards and toy pop guns, he saw no sign of the building sets. Frustrated, he turned at last to the counter, not in victory with a present found, but hat in hand to ask his friend for advice. Good Dom gave Arthgo a friendly smile as he approached, though almost at once his attention was diverted. For there on the counter was a small diorama made from 4 dolls. 2 were ragged and clad in tricolored dresses. The other 2 were spoiled, sporting royalist colors, and surrounded by little piles of gold. Both pairs were playing tug-of-war, a flag representing the nation hanging between them from the rope.
Aha! Thought you would get a kick out of seeing the girls again, Dom chuckled.
He dug behind the counter and drew out an old newspaper, the cartoon therein depicting them as the nation had seen.
I had half a mind to call, but I wanted to see your surprise.
I can't believe you found these, Arthgo chuckled. I thought they were lost forever.
Oh, I knew these ladies were lurking around here somewhere, the Dom laughed. Just never where I checked. Every few years the notion would come to me to look, but I would never find them. Then a week ago the missus sends me to clean out under the house, and a minute later I found these ladies.
That sounds a little too familiar to be comfortable. Arthgo tapped the ladies with his finger, remembering well how that character he'd drawn for the paper. Anyway, I'm looking for a set of interlocking plastic blocks. My daughter saw them a few weeks back, and...
Sorry about that. Dom shook his head. Out of stock.
Oh. Any idea when they'll be back? Or if I could make a special order?
Not for a while, I'm afraid. Dom sighed.
They're made by a little chemical company in Teltram. The name hung in the air for an uncomfortable, the light streaming through the windows seeming to dim. Then Arthgo nodded, forcing a laugh as he said, Ah, yes. Then the culprit is me.
Is that true?
Indeed. I penned the embargo language myself.
Ah, and at last the villain reveals himself.
But Dom laughed himself, saying,
The truth is, I'm hunting around to find a local chemist who can mimic the formula, but if that fails, I'll start carving the things from resin myself.
Rest assured that I'll be the first customer, Arthgo said. Perhaps even an investor.
No, I could never do that. Besides, your younger son already has a few sets. You get a knockoff for your daughter, and she'll be my first complaint that they're not real.
Real, not real. Ah, how the mind of a child puts things together, Arthgo said, shaking his head slowly. Ah well, better to try and fail than sit and lament a chance slipped by.
Exactly, Good Dom said, tapping the counter. Would you like a discount on a set of wooden dolls? I'm sure your little Philo would love them.
No, I'll go to my backup plan, pointing over his shoulder at a small toy sailboat on the back shelf. I'll take that one.
You know it'll be lost the first time she plays with it on the lake, right?
She needs to learn how to swim sometime, Arthgo said, pulling out his billfold. And besides, a happy birthday and then one less toy to clutter the house seemed like a fair bargain to me. Miserable, drizzling rain misted over the Panner Valley, coating the trees with sheaths of water and making a mockery of any attempted waterproofing. Corporal Marat Lusk shivered in his little guard booth, the wind blowing the water up and under the roof and coating both sides of his coat. Though the open front was a dirt path the government rode, and a crumbling triple arch bridge across the river which bore the valley's name. And for the 8th day in a row, it was Marat's job to guard this most important crossing point, Republic of Cadlamir and the unitary state of Teltram, one used by engineers perhaps twice a year to inspect the trestles of the actual Panner Valley Bridge, place where the actual checkpoints had been set up and the actual border guarding took place. But someone has to represent the flag, Marat said, echoing the words of the Commandant as he glanced at the Republic's banner from his booth, the tricolor soaked and dripping like a dish rag on a stick. What a load of... Marat shivered again, looking out across the short span of the bridge to his opposite number. There, playing a dreadful tune on a flute, was a border guard for Teltram, slouching in a chair, as soaked as he was, as devoid of meaning as he was, his own orange and white banner reduced to just as much a rag, the intricate crest hidden in soggy folds. Time passed slowly on a rainy watch, the sky a uniform gray, everything soaked, including the book which Marat sometimes used to help pass the time. At some point there was a shrill steam whistle, near distant rumble of the train passing over the trestle bridge. Marat closed his eyes. In his mind, he was able to see the train roll to a stop at the inspection platform, a little train station surrounded by trees of nowhere. Here, his comrades in the border guard services would embark to search for spies and contraband and state secrets, though on days like this, they would mostly be glad to be out of the rain, something the passengers and crew were unlikely to share, as the men made their dripping way through the galleries, checking tickets, asking questions to the conductor and engineer, and, if they were lucky, finding a banned bottle of perfume or candy box that someone was trying to smuggle across despite the ban. And in all likelihood, the piece of contraband would wind up as the centerpiece of lunch. The promised follow-up court summons to the smuggler would never be filed, and everyone would get on with their lives. It's just not worth the hassle of prosecuting someone for sticking 3 candy bars and a toy in their suitcase, Marat thought. Then his mind shifted. That one story that every border guard had from time to time. The one that meant no inspection was routine. That no matter how boring everything seemed, one could never be certain. Marat remembered well his version of that day. He had opened a compartment, expecting to find nothing, and had instead come upon a man with a silenced pistol that resembled a bicycle pump. The stranger had shot once, the round impacting the far wall and passing through, killing a young man on his way back from a business deal, though Marat had only learned that later. All he remembered was the animal panic which had consumed him as he stumbled away, screaming for aid. The blood they had found pooling out of the other compartment, along with the wails of the main partner. Of the shooter, they had seen nothing, save for an open window and an expanse of forest to search, which they had done, with army regulars and dogs and an airplane buzzing overhead. They had never found the shooter, nor could Marat ever recall what he had looked like, only that there had been papers and something else on the table before the nearly fatal shot and his flight. Likely the man escaped back across this very bridge while we were all tripping over ourselves in panic, Marat muttered to himself. He took a deep breath, looking out across the waterway. The flute had grown silent, and at first Marat thought that the man opposite had simply given up on the instrument. Then he narrowed his eyes, trying to see through the mist battering his face, and noticed movement. A smile spread across his lips as he abandoned the guard box and marched out onto the bridge. Across from him appeared a mustachioed and jolly gentleman named Hirax, a Teltram border guard he knew well. The The two had swapped stories, and then cigarettes for chocolates, and then other things there. Hirax waved to him. They both walked up to the middle of the bridge, where an arbitrary line in the ancient stone separated their countries and peoples. On one side, a land of wine and riots. The other, chocolates and jackboots. Or so Marat and his opposite joked. The two arrived now on that tarnished band of copper, broke countless laws with a quick shake and exchange of gifts. For Hirax, it was a bottle of Burgundy, for his country was dry as bone. For Marat, it was a set of plastic building blocks, for such novelties were hard to come by in his lands. The two chuckled for a moment. Hirax speaking in his thick accent. Curse the pissing rain. I almost crossed at the train. Haven't been posted up there in more than a week. Think your commander has it out for you? What commander doesn't? Marat asked. A laugh from his opposite. Ah, true, true. One of mine would demand a taste of this brandy or reprimand me, and the others would have me whipped. Hirax guffawed. And making it worse, they are my twin brothers. Marat laughed as well, half believing the man full, or at least in part, assuming that the two men simply resembled one. The other half knew. I'm going to ignore chat now. The other half knew that he was just like himself, a poor sod stuck at the edge of the world and wishing he was elsewhere. Ah, Hirax, you make this posting worth bearing. I would say the same, but it would be a lie. Staying away from the north coast or east garrisons in bandit country is worth any rainstorm. Yes, nice to be in a quiet place. As though to make a mockery of his words, there was a rumble of thunder over the drizzle at last turning into a proper storm. With a nod, the two men parted, waddling back to their respective guard posts, for the rest of the shift at the river ran ever higher, and the angels seemed to war in the heavens above. Marat closed his eyes, imagining the clouds like battleships, shooting broadsides of lightning at while the people below sat in the rain, as oblivious to the truth as fish under a naval battle. Dun dun dun.
Sorry for the distraction.
Why are you guys still fighting about Short Kings?
We're not fighting. Char and I are in full agreement. Yeah. See, even Drizzet's like, no. We're all agreeing. Once again, Death's Head has very good prose. I don't care that he said he hasn't touched this in a couple of years. That was still cohesive. What I heard from it, I realized that I should probably know where my son stuck my oil and oil filter, because I got to change my oil tomorrow. We can always revisit our stuff.
Literally,
right?
not
Definitely.
figuratively. Right?
Huh?
You need to have your oil changed literally, not figuratively.
In my pickup truck. Yeah. We're not taking that. No. Mm-mm. The oil light came on yesterday as I was heading to work, and because of the engine being so goddamn hot yesterday in this heat wave and it being too hot last night, I checked it this morning and nothing was showing on the dipstick. So I did not drive into work today. Plus I felt woozy and super fatigued from all the heat. And I was like, I'm not trying to drive. That's nope. All right. Now it is 10 minutes till 11 Eastern time.
I say we just wrap her up.
That's what I'm thinking. This was fun. And when we don't have authors, narrators, bookish people to interview, we're going to start doing some filler content like this, still being up here, continuing the show going, right? Various things that we have talked about is workshops, talking about certain topics, all the different things, reading people's stuff out that we have permission for, that are non-prompt related. This is what expansion and growth looks like, and even more unhinged than we normally are.
Yep, I will take this second to plug it because I know we're going to be plugging it later anyway. If you're not already, I'm 99% sure that all of you who are currently here are, but for the rare lurker who's just joining us, if you're not a member of the Discord, join the Discord. And please, please, if you have any suggestions for what you would like to see on Friday nights in place of author interviews for when we have scheduling conflicts or we just can't find anybody or whatever the reason may be, please put your suggestions in the Discord. Put like a little hashtag booked for Friday or whatever you want with it so that we know that it's your suggestion for that day. But yes, currently we have, the staff have come up with ideas, being workshops where we do stuff like how to maintain different perspectives from near third person or, omniscient third person or whatever it may be. We've talked about doing kind of like some other folks do and doing live critiques with people's permission and say, hey, you clean this up, plot hole there, etc. That's like Julie's strong point. So, leveraging her skills there. Or just doing live readings of people's stuff that isn't prompt related so that we keep it separate from the Saturday show. But if you have suggestions for other things, put it in the Discord. We would love to hear them. Izzy, do you have anything to say before I hit the outro?
Long live Short Kings!
There's nothing long about us. Yeah, we might have a punctuation one just for you. Not gonna lie.
Also, the M dash. The M dash. I know people are so scared to use it and whatnot, and there are appropriate places like so punctuation, various other things. The grammar police will come out, and I'm a kind police officer when it comes to that.
She just likes handcuffs.
No, not on me.
I never said on you, madam. I never said on you. I'm scared to use the M dash because, like, everybody says that, like, if they see an M dash, they just automatically assume it's written by AI. And I also found out that the Oxford comma used appropriately is also a strong indicator of AI, which drives me nuts because I am a long-time diehard fan of the Oxford comma. So
we ain't gonna devolve down into the somebody might think it's AI, just for the sheer fact that that's going to constantly change, and you shouldn't not write well just to avoid being mistaken for. So that's
But
yes, that is correct.
join the Discord, join the newsletter, check out the website, do all the things, all the socials. Be kind to yourselves. Make sure that if you're in the heat wave, you're staying cool. Make sure that you keep all of your limbs attached if you're celebrating tomorrow. Okay, that includes your fingers. You need those to type. We will still be having a show tomorrow night for those of you who don't want to be out with the explodey bang bang boom booms, or for, the people who just think that the only person they want to keep their company is themselves. We see you, okay? So, until tomorrow night, 7 p.m. Central, 8 p.m. Eastern. Be brave, be bold, but never be afraid to do whatever Julie tells you to do, which is to stay out of jail, because we don't have money. And, till tomorrow night, guys. Bye.